All right, another episode. Jung Naiv, we're not in Kiev anymore. Where are we here?
We're in Odessa.
Odessa. Where's Odessa?
Black Sea, opposite Istanbul.
In the very south of Ukraine.
We're as far as you can go apart from Crimea.
Tell me about Odessa. How has Odessa been doing the last couple of weeks, a month?
Odessa is a very resilient city. There's a saying in Odessa that Ukraine is Ukraine, but Odessa is Odessa.
Why?
I guess it's due to the fact that the economy runs from the port, and it's therefore cosmopolitan, multinational, and pretty much bucks the trend of most economics in Ukraine.
So I learned the last couple of days that the revolution started out in Lviv and Kiev and all that. When did the uprising, the protests come to Odessa?
Euromaidan protests started almost straight away, but they were very, very small. A few hundred people.
In November?
Yeah, back in November.
And
it ebbed and flowed a little bit. You know, the numbers went up and down. And obviously, as things went off in Kiev, when people were hurt, the numbers got bigger. And whenever it started to die off, somebody in Kiev did something stupid to keep it going. So it's now quite sizable, although I would debate quite strongly whether it's pro-European and pro-European Union, or whether it's now a matter of human rights, dignity, anti-corruption, good governance. The people of Odessa are Russian-speaking. There is an affinity to Russia, but it's an illusion to think that just because they speak Russian, they want to be with Russia.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you hear all the time. All the Russian speakers are pro-Russian and the Ukrainian speakers are pro-Ukrainian. That's bullshit.
Yeah, that's not quite how I would have phrased it, but yeah, that's very much the case. Just because Odessa speaks Russia as its first language of choice, and always has, and probably always will,
yeah,
doesn't mean to say it wants to be submissive to Moscow.
So, have there been like violent protests here?
There's been one or two minor incidents. For the most part, Odessa people are clever, smart people, intellectual people.
Intellectual.
They will argue their case verbally rather than physically.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a city renowned for humor. It's a city renowned for writers and thinkers. So it's not likely that you're going to see another Kiev in Odessa.
So what have all the thinkers and writers said over the last couple of weeks? Have they positioned themselves, maybe?
Some have not. Some have stayed on the fence, and some have come out as pro-Ukraine.
Pro-Ukraine means
we don't want to see the country split.
Oh,
basically.
Yeah. Is that a danger?
I think that perspective very much depends on whereabouts in Ukraine you are. Some people, maybe in the east, will have one view. In Lviv, in the west, will have another. Odessa, I think, sees life through its own lens. It's like I say, Odessa is Odessa, Ukraine is Ukraine.
But why is it so special? You mean you mentioned the port and all that? Why?
I guess it's just so cosmopolitan. After hundreds of years of ships coming and going and being a free port, and the Greeks being here a lot, the Europeans being here a lot, Italian cruise ships coming in all the time. I guess Odessa just sees itself as Odessa.
So people don't have any problems here with foreigners? And
No. I've lived here 10 years. I'm as English as they come. So, no. I've never once had a problem. Not with the people, not with the police, not with anybody.
So, do you remember a month back or a few weeks back, Yanukovych got ousted?
Yes.
What happened here? Did the city react, or did they just like, all right, yeah?
I can't just say they shrugged it off, but a lot of people recognized him for what he was.
What was he?
A crook. A crook.
A crook.
A crook. I don't think many people believe he was a dictator or had it in him to be a dictator.
Well, he was democratically voted in.
He was democratically voted in.
That's a difference.
And Odessa is traditionally a party of regions voting city.
Party of region is Yanukovych's party?
It was, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was.
But I say that Odessa also had a mayor that was orange, from the Orange Revolution. At the same time, it voted in MPs from Party of Region. So you cannot say it's all blue, you cannot say it's all orange. It very much depends. Odessa would not put up with somebody from another city as mayor. It will be somebody from Odessa. That's it.
But I hear there's no mayor right now.
No, he was he resigned basically because if he didn't resign, he would have been sacked.
Why is that?
I
mean, in Kiev there's no mayor. Lviv
No.
there's a new mayor of some kind.
Nikolaev, there's no mayor either.
What's going on?
Mr. Yanukovych put in a power vertical. In other words, you did as he said, or you went.
Really?
Really.
He appointed guys and was like, you be the mayor.
Yeah, pretty much.
Huh.
Pretty much. Despite the elections for mayor,
There were
people were promised positions, and it's not who votes; it's who count the votes that count.
Right. So, I mean, you say you've been living here for 10 years?
Yeah.
So you kind of experienced the last revolution.
Yeah, just about.
Oh.
Just about.
How was that different than compared to now?
The last revolution was, I think, much more to do with a national agreement that they would not put up with fixed elections. This was a chance to change everything. Unfortunately, nothing changed afterwards.
Why?
Because you look at who Ukraine has had as leaders. Yushchenko?
Yushchenko was the first one, right?
No.
After the revolution?
Yeah, after the revolution, yeah. But Yushchenko was part of the Kuchma government.
Who's that?
He was the president before, as was Ms. Tymoshenko, as was Mr. Yanukovych.
Oh.
So there is like a trail of leaders going back, and Mr. Kuchma was part of Mr. Kravchuk's, who was president when the Soviet Union collapsed. So there is a line going right the way through of personalities from the USSR to now, which Ukraine must break.
And the line isn't even broken yet, because Tymoshenko is still active.
Yeah,
and might get into the presidency.
That's right, which is why she has to lose. She has to lose for Ukraine to move.
I also hear like it'd be a bad idea to have another oligarch as president, because then the system might.
Yes, maybe so.
But did you say it's not important that it's not going to be some kind of oligarch? It's important that it's not going to be Tymoshenko.
Yes.
Why?
Because
is she a bad oligarch?
She's an autocrat. What she says goes, and if you don't agree with it, you will be moved or removed.
But doesn't she call herself a Democrat?
I can call myself Scottish, but I'm not. No.
I mean, she was in power before, right?
She was in power before.
But not president?
She was prime minister.
Tell us about that. Like,
well, the nicest thing I can say, and probably the most accurate thing I can say, is there is nobody better at rhetoric than Mrs. Tymoshenko.
Explain.
She says the right things at the right time for the right ears.
Is she a populist?
Yes, she is a populist. But when it comes to doing instead of talking, then she has struggled to deliver anything.
It sounds like some German politicians.
Quite possibly. I will not comment on the German politics.
Yeah. And how about like a guy like Klitschko? Would people in Odessa and Ukraine be better off with him? He's not an oligarch.
No, he's not.
He's not from the old system.
No.
What do you think?
Mr. Klitschko is surrounded by some very clever people.
Who?
He's also surrounded by a lot of people from the old parties of party regions. Ms. Tymoshenko's party all fell out with the leaderships of their respective parties.
They went to his party.
Correct. So Mr. Klitschko may not smell, but within his party there are some smelly people.
It's amazing that like it's like all a cycle. Like they all come back, or What is this country like? I mean, that's unlike Western countries where when a politician is done, he's done.
Correct. I would say most people in Ukraine in politics go into politics to protect what they have.
Oh, because I learned like you can only basically go in politics if you have lots of money and
or connections. Or compromat, as they say.
What is that?
You have some information on somebody that they don't want to come out.
That's why you go into politics?
That's why they let you into politics.
Give us an example.
I won't give you an example on camera. But there are people in politics who are paid to be in politics, who bribe their way into politics, who go into politics to protect what they have. Uh-huh. There are very few that go into politics for the benefit of Ukraine. Very few. Mr. Klitschko is probably one.
So you wouldn't mind if he got in a great position?
It would depend very much on how much he controls his party, rather than his party controls him.
Is he the leader of his party?
He is the leader of his party. Okay. But Party of Regions did not control Mr. Yukhanovich when he got in. Batisklava, Mrs. Tymoshenko's party, has never controlled Mrs. Tymoshenko. She has always controlled them.
As you said, she's an autocrat?
She's an autocrat. I mean, there's good times for autocrats, and there are bad times for autocrats. She's a decision maker. But she's not right for Ukraine for the next 5 years. Maybe she can get Ukraine through the next 3, 4, 5 months behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. But after that, she needs to go. She holds back the country.
Tell us what the power of a president in Ukraine is and the power of a prime minister. Maybe it's more important to be prime minister?
It depends.
Because she was prime minister.
She was. It depends on the constitution you're working under. Right now, we've reverted back to the 2004 constitution, which splits the presidential powers and the parliamentary powers more evenly. But, as always, there is a but. The 2004 constitution was hastily written after the Orange Revolution to split the powers. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't work. It pulls at itself in all directions. It's just bad. It needs to be rewritten.
By who?
That's a very good question.
The Maidan? The Maidan people? Or a referendum?
Or? Civil society certainly has a part to play.
Apropos civil society, I've met some people of the Rights Society, Pravi Sector, Svoboda.
Yeah.
Are they represented here in Odessa?
Svoboda has representation in Odessa. Right Sector, not very much. The main thing is that if they are going to influence Ukraine, they do it through democratic means. They join in the politics and not be excluded from the politics, and that takes away the violence and the threats. And
you hope so?
It's the only way.
Especially the private sector people are very scary dudes.
They have their opinion, and
I mean they're fascists.
Every country has its fascists.
Of course.
Every country has its communists.
Oh, of course.
So the thing is to include them in the political dialogue, not exclude them.
But I mean, we have neo-Nazis in Germany, but they are not allowed to run around in uniforms and carry weapons.
This is true.
In the public.
This is true. I can't think of any country in Europe that would allow that.
Yeah.
It's but these are strange times in Ukraine and volatile times. So hopefully they will join the political discourse properly, abandon all thoughts of violence and all threats, and their voice will be heard. People will vote for them or they won't.
I asked the private sector guy what happens if like the Maidan and the new government under Tymoshenko Klitschko decides to go in a different direction than they intend, because they're very nationalistic and all that. And they were like, well, we're gonna make our voice heard and carry on and get another protest started.
The problem or the issue then is how many people will follow that protest. Will it have traction? Will it not?
I mean, there will always be people who will be disappointed of the new government.
Of course, that's democracy. Right. It's the majority is the majority, the minority is the minority. Right. The thing is, of course, to listen to the minority as much as you can and try and meet a consensus in the middle wherever you can. Right. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't.
Right. So we came straight from the Maidan. On the Maidan, there are still people live in, and they say, well, we're not going to go anywhere until this whole system has changed.
Yeah.
Do you think they will stay there forever, or will there be a point where the system actually changes?
I think the system has to change, and how long that will be, well, demographically speaking, the young people of Ukraine, now starting to get to vote, it's been independent 22, 23 years, have only known Ukraine. They've not known the USSR. Yeah. It's a chapter in the history books.
Me neither. Like I've never...
Exactly. It's just a chapter in the history books. Right. Their attraction, their draw to Russia or to Europe is different to people my generation. So as they get older and the old communists literally die off, and literally, they are most of their voting base is old. So their communists will probably lose, may not even get into the radar in 15 years' time.
Wow.
It's 5% threshold. So 15 years from now, there'll be a whole more generation of only Ukrainians. That's all we know. And they may struggle. Svoboda, it depends. If Ukraine evolves peacefully and follows a democratic path, then they become either more centralized and more mainstream, or again they will fall out of the radar too. So I think Svoboda will actually become more mainstream, if I'm honest.
But back to the Maidan people, they say, well, we're not going to leave. Like what needs to happen that they are satisfied? What do you think?
The institutions of state must change. It's corrupt from top to bottom. From the teacher in your classroom, you pay to get your diploma.
What?
Seriously, all the way up.
Here in Odessa, when
everywhere.
You go to school?
When you go to school, you can...
And my mom, like if I went to school, my mom would bribe the teacher, or I would bribe the teacher.
Yeah, pretty much. Or to get in a school, you pay the director to get into a good school.
It's amazing.
It's true. It's true. So the institutions must change, from teachers to hospitals to the police to the tax collectors. And if Europe is serious about making Ukraine democratic, it's the institutions and the institution leaders, not the politicians, they should target.
Okay.
It's institutional change, and the way that institutions work will remove 80% of the corruption and leave the politicians corrupt at the top, but that's everywhere. But it will reduce it for everybody you see in the street. Greatly.
Do you think also the minds have to change? I mean, because if you,
of course,
if you grew up for like 20 years and are used to being bribed and to bribe,
of course.
And now the institution changes and bribes are not, almost not possible anymore. Do people like, oh, well, I don't even have to bribe them anymore?
Oh, the issue with bribery is it's a two-way street.
Exactly.
You get stopped by the traffic policeman for speeding, and you have been speeding. He will take a bribe so you don't go to court. And that will be cheaper than going to court and less time consuming. The issue is then, do you make that bribe a legal fine on the spot with a receipt and then be able to have some transparency as to where the money goes or not?
That's a good point. And one last thing about Crimea, like what do people in Odessa think about the whole Crimean crisis?
That very much depends on who you speak to. Most, I have to say, would not want to see Crimea go to Russia. Most. I mean, there's obviously emotional ties from the Russians for Crimea.
Why?
It's been a very Russian-orientated peninsula for a few hundred years. I mean, there's the Black Sea Fleet. It's debatable just how strategic that is. I mean, Turkey can shut the Bosphorus Straits, and it's no strategic use whatsoever for the Mediterranean. So,
but why is NATO? Why is the West interested in them? If they have, I mean, Turkey is already in NATO.
It is. Turkey has good relations with Russia. It'd be very unlikely for ever to shut the Bosphorus Straits.
Right.
But it also has good relations with the Crimean Tatar, of course. I think Turkey actually has a crucial role to play in sorting this out. how much of a role it's playing right now is debatable. I think there will be a lot happening behind the scenes, very little said in public.
And do you have like a scenario how this whole Crimean crisis could end peacefully? I mean, I talked to some Crimean Tatars, and he made a point, like he was like, I don't have a problem with Russian soldiers in their Crimean bases.
Yeah.
But I have a problem with Russian soldiers on the streets.
Correct.
Could there be the compromise that they go back to their bases, they stay in their bases, and?
I think everybody would like that. However, it may be now that things have taken on a life of their own, shall we say? It may be that
too late now.
Possibly. When you look at South Ossetia, it's a bad comparison, but they were annexed, I suppose, for want of a better word, by Russia. Not officially annexed, and then they applied to join the Russian Federation, and the Russian Federation politely said no. It may well be that even after the Crimean referendum, whether you believe it's legitimate or not...
Do you think so?
Constitutionally, it's not. Now, whether they should have a referendum under properly democratic situation where there are no Russian soldiers on the streets with guns is a different question. But it may be that they will be allowed to have their referendum, and Russia may still say, thank you very much, but we're not going to let you join. We may offer you some sort of protection, or in which case it's de facto Russian territory, but not de jure. Not that it would be de jure in the eyes of the world, of course, but in Russian eyes. Right. It very much depends on how Mr. Putin wants to play it. The ball is in his court. Literally. I mean, there's nothing that Europeans can do.
Nothing?
You can...
Maybe I heard about sanctions and trade sanctions and all that.
They take a while to hurt. And Mr. Putin's no dummy. If you think all his money sat in Europe and all his oligarchy money is sat in Europe, I think we're in for a big surprise. It's hard. Sanctions are a tool for changing people's minds. They're not a punishment, or they should not be used as a punishment. If you want to punish somebody, you use the criminal law. I don't really think Mr. Putin's that bothered about sanctions, if I'm honest. Right. He can live a year or two under sanctions, and how long before the West needs Russia for Iran, for Afghanistan, for Syria, for how long before you need to re-establish some sort of working relationship? He can take the pain? Yes. Yeah. Will he take the pain? If he wants to. So what?
It's up to him.
Yeah, I think so. At the moment, things can change, of course. He may do some, or he or somebody underneath him may do something stupid. But we will see.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Done? Yeah, lovely.